Every day we wake up to news that reminds us of how fragile life truly is. Today, the world lost four remarkable American legends. People who inspired us, entertained us, and shaped our culture in ways we'll never forget. Their stories remind us that greatness isn't about how long we live. It's about the mark we leave behind.
The news was confirmed quietly in the early hours of the morning. Stephen Lewis had passed away, closing a chapter in public life defined by courage, compassion, and an unwavering belief in justice. For decades, his voice carried across courtrooms, parliaments, and global stages. It was not loud, but it was steady. And in that steadiness, people found trust. Born into a family deeply rooted in public service, Stephen Lewis seemed destined to speak for others. But his journey was never about legacy alone. It was about purpose. From a young age, he showed a deep awareness of inequality and human suffering, an awareness that would guide him for the rest of his life. His early years in politics were shaped by conviction. As leader of Ontario's New Democratic Party, he stood firm on issues that many others avoided. Poverty, social justice, and human rights were not distant ideas to him. They were urgent realities. He spoke about them with clarity, often reminding others that leadership meant responsibility, not comfort. Colleagues remember him as both passionate and thoughtful. One former associate shared, "Stephen didn't just debate issues. He lived them. You could feel his sincerity in every word." That sincerity became his signature. In time, his work reached beyond national borders. As Canada's ambassador to the United Nations, Stephen Lewis carried his values onto the global stage. There, he became a powerful advocate for international development and humanitarian causes. His speeches were not filled with empty promises. They were grounded in real stories, stories of people often forgotten. Perhaps his most impactful work came during his role as the UN Special Envoy for HIV/AIDS in Africa. At a time when the crisis demanded urgent attention, he became one of its strongest voices. He traveled extensively, meeting families, listening to their struggles, and bringing their stories to the world. A humanitarian worker once said, "When Stephen spoke, people listened, not because they had to, but because they knew he spoke the truth." His words carried weight because they were backed by action. Even outside official roles, his commitment never faded. Through the Stephen Lewis Foundation, he continued to support communities affected by HIV/AIDS. The work was personal. It always had been. He believed that dignity was not something to be earned, it was something to be protected. Those closest to him describe a man of quiet strength. A man who carried heavy responsibilities but never lost his empathy. A family member reflected, "He gave so much of himself to the world, but at home he was simply kind, patient, and deeply present." As news of his passing spread, tributes began to pour in. Leaders, activists, and everyday citizens shared memories of how he had shaped their lives. Many spoke not just of what he achieved but of how he made them feel, heard, valued, and understood. In a world often marked by division, Stephen Lewis stood for unity. He believed that compassion could bridge even the deepest divides. And through his life's work, he proved that belief was not naive, it was necessary. His passing marks the end of a powerful era in compassionate leadership. But his legacy does not fade with his absence. It lives on in every policy shaped by fairness, every voice raised for justice, and every act of kindness inspired by his example. Now, as the world reflects, there is a quiet sense of gratitude. Gratitude for a life that chose service over silence. For a voice that never wavered when it mattered most. Stephen Lewis may no longer walk among us, but the values he carried, justice, dignity, and humanity, remain. And in those values his story continues. The news was confirmed with quiet sadness, echoing through galleries and studios around the world. Melvin Edwards had passed away, leaving behind a body of work forged in strength, memory, and resistance. In the stillness that followed, many reflected not just on his art, but on the powerful voice it carried. His sculptures did not simply sit in spaces. They spoke. They challenged. They remembered. Born in Houston, Texas, and raised in Los Angeles, Melvin Edwards grew up in a world shaped by change and struggle. From an early age, he witnessed the tensions of race and identity in America. These experiences would later become the foundation of his artistic expression. He found his medium in metal. Cold, hard, and unyielding. Yet in his hands it became something else entirely. Through welding, cutting, and shaping he turned steel into emotion. Each piece carried weight, not just in form but in meaning. His most recognized series, Lynch Fragments, began in the 1960s. These small-scale sculptures spoke volumes. Chains, tools, and sharp forms came together to reflect pain, history, and survival. They were not easy to look at. And that was the point. A fellow artist once said, "Melvin didn't create for comfort. He created to make sure we never forgot." That truth followed him throughout his life. As the civil rights movement unfolded, Edwards stood firmly within its spirit. His art became a quiet protest. It did not shout, but it endured. It asked viewers to pause, to think, and to confront uncomfortable truths. Over the years, his work reached audiences across the world. From New York to Paris, from museums to public spaces, his sculptures found homes where they could continue speaking. Despite global recognition, he remained deeply connected to his roots. Those who knew him often spoke of his humility. He carried great talent but never sought attention for himself. Instead, he let the work lead. A close friend shared, he believed the art should speak first. He never needed to stand in front of it. His creative journey was not limited to one place. He spent time in Africa and Europe, drawing inspiration from different cultures and histories. These experiences deepened his understanding and added new layers to his work. Through decades of artistic exploration, Melvin Edwards stayed true to his vision. He did not follow trends. He followed truth. Each sculpture became a record of time, shaped by both personal experience and collective memory. Students and younger artists looked up to him as a guide. Not just for his skill but for his integrity. He showed them that art could be both beautiful and honest. That it could carry pain and still create connection. One former student recalled, "He taught us that art is not just what you see. It's what you feel and what you remember after you walk away." That lesson continues to live on. As news of his passing spread, tributes came from across the art world. Curators, historians, and fellow artists shared their grief and gratitude. Many spoke of his courage. Others spoke of his quiet strength. On social media, one tribute read, "His work gave shape to stories that words could not hold. He changed the way we see history." Another simply said, "Thank you for showing us truth even when it was hard." His death marks the end of a vital chapter in modern American art. But his influence does not fade. It remains in the steel he shaped and in the minds he opened. Today his sculptures stand as more than objects. They are witnesses. They carry voices from the past into the present. They remind us of struggle but also of resilience. In galleries filled with silence, his work continues to speak. Melvin Edwards may no longer be here, but the stories he forged in metal will endure. They will continue to challenge, to inspire, and to remind future generations of the power of art to hold truth. And in that enduring presence his legacy lives on, strong, unbroken, and impossible to ignore. The news was confirmed in a quiet statement, shared without noise but felt across generations. Christopher North had passed away, leaving behind a sound that once filled homes, cars, and late-night airwaves with warmth and calm. There was a stillness to his music. A softness that did not demand attention but gently held it. And for many, that sound became part of life's most personal moments. Born into a time when music was changing, Christopher North found his voice through keys and melody. He was not drawn to the spotlight. Instead, he found comfort behind the instrument, where emotion could flow freely without words. As a founding member of Ambrosia, he helped shape a sound that would define an era. The 1970s brought a wave of soft rock, and within it his keyboard work stood out. It was smooth, layered, and deeply expressive. Songs like "Biggest Part of Me" and "How Much I Feel" carried his signature touch. The notes were gentle yet unforgettable. They stayed with listeners long after the music faded. A fellow band member once shared, "Chris didn't just play notes. He created feeling. You could hear his heart in every chord." That quiet emotional depth became his identity. In studios he was known for his focus and patience. He worked carefully, shaping each sound until it felt right. There was no rush. Only intention. Producers often admired his ability to bring balance to a song. One music producer recalled, "He understood space. He knew when to play and when to let silence speak." That's a rare gift. Beyond the music, Christopher North was a man of humility. He did not chase fame. He did not seek headlines. Instead, he allowed the music to travel to reach people in its own time. As Ambrosia toured and gained success, audiences connected deeply with their sound. Concert halls would fill with quiet anticipation, and when the first notes began, a sense of calm would settle over the crowd. Fans often described his music as comforting, familiar, like something that had always been there. One listener wrote in tribute, "His songs were the soundtrack to my life. They were there in moments of joy and in moments of loss." That connection, though unseen, was powerful. Over the years, music trends changed. Styles shifted. But his work remained timeless. It did not belong to one moment. It belonged to many. Even outside the spotlight, his influence continued. Younger musicians studied his approach. They listened closely, trying to understand how something so simple could feel so complete. A former student once said, "He taught us that music isn't about showing off. It's about reaching someone even if you never meet them." That lesson stayed with those who followed his path. Those closest to him remember a gentle spirit. Someone who valued quiet over noise, depth over attention. A family member shared, "He didn't need to say much. His music said everything for him." As news of his passing spread, tributes began to appear across platforms. Musicians, fans, and friends all shared their memories. One tribute read, "Christopher North gave us songs that feel like home. His sound will never leave us." Another simply said, "Thank you for the music that stayed when words could not." His passing marks the end of a chapter in music that valued feeling over flash. A time when melody carried meaning and simplicity held power. Yet even in absence, his presence remains. Every time a familiar tune plays, every time a soft piano fills the air, his work returns. Not as memory alone, but as something still alive. Christopher North may no longer be here, but the music he helped create continues to move quietly through the world. It reaches new listeners just as it once reached millions before. And in those gentle notes, his story continues. A story not told through loud moments but through lasting ones. Through songs that ask nothing yet give so much. In the end, his legacy is not only in the music itself, but in the feeling it leaves behind. A sense of calm. A sense of connection. A reminder of moments that mattered. And as those melodies continue to play softly and steadily, they carry his voice forward, unchanged, enduring, and forever part of the soundtrack of life.